The strange thing about money is that our brains were never designed for it. For most of human history, humans didn't manage budgets. They didn't check investment apps. They didn't plan retirement. They hunted. They gathered food. They survived the day. For thousands of years, survival meant something simple. Food today, safety tonight, not planning 10 years ahead. But today, we live in a completely different world. A world of bank accounts, credit cards, budgets, savings goals, investment strategies. A world that asks us to plan years, sometimes decades, into the future. And that creates a strange psychological problem, because the human brain did not evolve for modern money. Instead, it carries the memory of several different financial ages. Ancient systems that once helped humans survive, but still influence how we spend, save, and judge ourselves today. Even now, those ages are still active inside the human mind. They shape the way we react to stress, the way we think about security, the way we compare ourselves to others, and most importantly, why so many people eventually look at their finances and think, I should have started earlier. I waited too long. I'm already too late. To understand that feeling, we have to travel through the 4 financial ages of the human mind. And it begins with the oldest one of all, the age of survival. The first financial system humans ever developed was not about saving, it was about surviving. For most of human history, humans lived in environments where resources were uncertain. Food was not guaranteed tomorrow. Energy had to be protected. Opportunities had to be taken immediately. In that world, the smartest strategy was simple. Use what you have now. Solve the problem in front of you. Relieve discomfort quickly. That ancient survival system still lives inside the modern brain, and it activates most strongly under one condition. Stress. Imagine the end of a long day. Work has drained your energy. Your mind feels heavy. Your patience is low. You open your phone. Food delivery appears on the screen. You tap a few buttons. Dinner is on the way. In that moment, your brain is not calculating financial efficiency. It is solving a survival problem. Low energy, high stress, immediate relief. The fastest solution wins. The same thing happens in many small moments of everyday life. A stressful week leads to a spontaneous purchase. A boring evening leads to browsing online stores. A difficult project ends. And you reward yourself with something new. None of these choices feel dramatic. In fact, they often feel reasonable. Comforting even. Because emotional spending rarely feels like a mistake while it's happening. It feels like relief. It feels like solving a problem in the present moment. And in ancient environments, that instinct worked extremely well. If you found food, you ate it. If you had energy, you used it. If an opportunity appeared, you took it immediately. Waiting could mean losing everything. The modern financial world, however, operates very differently. Today, many important financial decisions reward patience instead of immediacy. Saving requires waiting. Investing requires long-time horizons. Building financial stability often depends on repeating small actions over many years. And that creates a quiet conflict inside the human mind. Because part of the brain still lives in the survival age. The part that prefers immediate relief, immediate comfort, immediate solutions. So when people feel frustrated with emotional spending, it's easy to assume something is wrong with them. But the truth is more complicated. Emotional spending is not simply a lack of discipline. It is the echo of a survival system that once helped humans stay alive. But survival alone was not enough. At some point in human history, something remarkable happened. Humans discovered how to store resources. Early civilizations began building granaries. Grain was collected after harvest, stored carefully, protected from storms, animals, and time. For the first time, people could prepare for tomorrow, not just survive the day, but reduce uncertainty about the future. And that discovery changed the human relationship with resources. because when storage became possible, a new instinct appeared, the instinct for security. Instead of using everything immediately, people began setting some aside. Food for winter, supplies for difficult seasons, protection against bad harvests. That instinct still lives inside the modern financial mind. You can see it when someone opens a savings account for the first time, or when someone decides to build an emergency fund, or when someone quietly begins tracking their expenses. Often it begins with a small moment of intention. A notebook appears on a desk. On the first page, someone writes a list. Things I want to improve this year. Learn more about money. Track expenses. Build a small safety buffer. The handwriting looks hopeful. The plan feels simple. Nothing dramatic. Just small steps toward stability. But life rarely moves in perfect lines. A few days later, work becomes busy again. Deadlines return. Unexpected expenses appear. Responsibilities multiply. The notebook closes. Not forever, just temporarily. But temporary delays often become long pauses. Weeks turn into months. And slowly that first intention moves into the background of daily life. This is one of the quiet patterns of the security age. People do not usually reject the idea of financial stability. Most people understand the value of saving. They understand the importance of preparation. But preparation requires something the survival brain struggles with: patience, consistency, the willingness to act today for a benefit that may appear years later. And that creates a subtle tension inside the mind. Part of the brain still lives in the survival age, seeking immediate relief, while another part has entered the security age, trying to build stability over time. And for many people, that tension creates something else: beginnings that never fully continue. A budgeting spreadsheet created on a Sunday afternoon, a savings goal written down with good intentions, a plan to track spending starting next month. None of these moments are mistakes. In fact, they often represent the beginning of something better. But many financial journeys do not fail because of dramatic errors. They slow down because small beginnings quietly disappear. And even when people manage to build stability, another force eventually enters the picture. A force that did not exist in early survival environments, or even in the earliest forms of financial security. Comparison. Because once people have enough to survive, and enough to feel safe, they begin to ask a different question. Not do I have enough, but how do I compare? As societies grew larger, wealth began to communicate status. Merchants displayed success. Nobles built castles. Families measured prosperity against neighbors. Money became a language, a signal of position. And even though the world has changed dramatically since those early societies, that instinct has never disappeared. Today, the signals look different. Instead of castles and gold coins, we see apartments, cars, vacations, job titles, lifestyles. The modern world is filled with signals about financial progress. Sometimes they appear in everyday conversations. A colleague casually mentions buying a home. A friend talks about an investment they started years ago. Someone from school shares a promotion online. None of these moments are meant to be competitive. Most people are simply sharing parts of their lives. But the human brain interprets these signals in a particular way. It compares. And comparison quietly changes how we see ourselves. A decision that once felt normal suddenly feels like a missed opportunity. A moment that once seemed small now looks like a turning point. You remember hearing advice years ago. Someone mentioned learning about money earlier. Someone suggested starting to save sooner. At the time, it sounded like casual conversation. But after enough comparisons, the mind begins to reinterpret those moments. The brain begins asking difficult questions. What if I had started then? What if I had paid more attention? What if that small decision had gone a different way? And gradually, comparison reshapes memory. The past begins to feel heavier, not because anything dramatic happened, but because the brain is now measuring it against other timelines. And this process slowly builds a powerful psychological space. A space where people begin telling quiet stories about themselves. Stories like, "I'm just not good with money. I probably started too late." Other people seem to understand this better than I do. These thoughts rarely appear suddenly. They form slowly over time, after repeated comparisons, after seeing others move forward, after noticing small differences that gradually feel larger. And once those stories begin to settle in the mind, comparison produces something new, something powerful, something that did not exist in earlier financial ages: regret. Unlike the earlier ages, this one does not come from survival environments. It comes from something much more modern: choice. For most of human history, financial choices were limited. People worked the land they were born into. They inherited the trades of their families. Their economic paths were narrow. There were not hundreds of financial strategies to consider. There were not endless articles about investing. There were not thousands of different opinions about money. But the modern world is different. Today, people are surrounded by financial possibilities. Save, invest, start a business, build passive income, learn new skills, change careers. And with more possibilities comes something else: more imagined alternatives. The human brain has a powerful ability called counterfactual thinking. It allows us to imagine alternative versions of the past. What if I had done that differently? What if I had started earlier? What if that small moment had gone another way? At first, these thoughts can be useful. They help us learn from experience. They help us adjust future behavior. But when comparison is constant, counterfactual thinking can slowly turn into something heavier. Regret. In the regret age, the brain begins revisiting ordinary moments from the past. Moments that once felt small. A budgeting app downloaded years ago. You opened it once, looked at the categories, then closed it again. Not because you rejected the idea, just because it wasn't the right moment. Another memory appears. A podcast episode about personal finance. You listened during a commute. Halfway through, you remember thinking, "This is actually useful." You planned to finish it later, but later turned into weeks, then months, and eventually the episode disappeared into the background of life. Another moment returns. A spreadsheet created one quiet Sunday afternoon. You titled the file carefully: Monthly Budget Plan. You filled in a few numbers: income, expenses. Then the week became busy again. The spreadsheet remained saved on the computer, but never opened again. None of these moments looked like turning points. No alarm sounded. No dramatic mistake occurred. They were simply small decisions that drifted away. But years later, the brain looks at those moments differently, because comparison has already changed the context. The mind begins rewriting the story. That was the moment I should have started. That was the opportunity I ignored. That was when everything could have been different. The past begins to feel heavier than it actually was. But something important is often misunderstood about regret. The past itself is not heavy. Old spreadsheets are not heavy, receipts are not heavy, half-finished plans are not heavy. What becomes heavy is the story built around them. A story that says, that moment defined everything. A story that says that opportunity was the only one. A story that says now it's too late. But the objects from the past do not say those things. They are simply evidence. Evidence of where someone once stood. Evidence of what life looked like in that moment. Not a final verdict about the future. And this leads to an important realization about financial lives. Most people do not struggle because of one dramatic mistake. Not one missed investment. Not one purchase. Not 1 year of poor decisions. Financial lives are shaped much more quietly. They are shaped by patterns of attention. Where attention goes, what people repeat, what habits continue long enough to matter. Some people spend years replaying the artifacts of their past. Every missed beginning, every postponed plan, every moment that could have been different. Others do something simpler. They take one lesson from the past, just one, and allow the rest of the past to remain where it belongs, behind them. Because the purpose of understanding the past is not to live inside it. It is to learn from it, and then move forward. When people say they feel too late with money, they are usually describing something deeper than numbers. They are describing a conflict inside the mind, the survival instinct that seeks immediate relief, the security instinct that tries to build stability, the comparison instinct that measures progress against others, and the regret instinct that replays the past, all speaking at the same time. And when those voices overlap, the future can start to feel closed. But the most dangerous thing about financial regret is not the opportunity you missed. It is the opportunity you might miss next, if you believe the story that it is already too late, because the past does not decide what happens next. Attention does. Habits do. Small, repeated decisions do. And sometimes the most important change in a financial life does not begin with a dramatic opportunity. It begins with a simple shift in perspective. The realization that feeling late does not mean the path is finished. It simply means the mind has been looking backward for too long. And in the next video, we will explore another powerful force shaping financial lives every day: invisible habits. The small behaviors that quietly repeat themselves and slowly determine where money and life eventually go.